Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode of Immigration Law Made Easy. I'm your host, Attorney Hillary Walsh, and I'm excited to talk to you today about the difference between two types of hearings in immigration court, particularly for people who are detained. So if you are not detained, then these two types of hearings won't really make that big of a difference to you. If you do have a family member, however, who is in a detention center and has immigration court from the detention center, this is a great video for you because it's going to teach you the difference between a bond hearing and a master calendar hearing. And it's so important to know the difference between these two things because they are treated totally different. They look the same and they take place in the same room. They feel the same. The immigration courts and the immigration judge in particular treat these totally different. And in fact, if you hire my law firm for a bond hearing, oftentimes we will not also be representing your family member in the master calendar hearing. So it's really important for you to know the difference between what is a bond hearing, what are you hiring New Frontier Immigration Law for, and what is a master calendar hearing, which you are not hiring New Immigration Law for. That way everyone's on the same page. And that's what this episode is for. And it's going to help you really understand the differences so we can all navigate the system together in support of our loved one. All right, so let's jump into first things first. We're going to talk about what's a bond hearing and what's a master calendar hearing. Let's start with what a bond hearing is. A bond hearing is a court proceeding where a detained immigrant can request to be released from immigration custody while their case is pending. So you can't request, you really can't request a bond hearing from an immigration judge if your immigration case is closed, if it's been terminated, if you've been ordered removed and you didn't appeal. You can't request a bond hearing unless your immigration case is pending. And the main goal here is to determine whether the individual, the person who is detained, poses a danger to the community or if he or she is a flight risk. We also have to weigh whether they're a national security risk, but really that goes into whether they're a danger. So let's kind of talk about what the purpose is. The primary purpose of a bond hearing is for the immigration judge to decide whether the detained immigrant can be released on bond. And if so, how much that bond will be. Sometimes judges will set $5,000 because they think that the immigrant isn't really a flight risk, but perhaps they had a DUI and so they have potentially some danger to the community that they're trying to mitigate. Or maybe they think they're really a flight risk. Like I've represented a lot of Indians from the state of Punjab, and we would get regularly $20,000, $25,000 bonds because the judges believed that this population was a high flight risk. To be honest, I've never had an Indian who didn't show back up for immigration court. So I really don't know why judges believe that, but nevertheless, that was the judge's decision on how to mitigate flight risk. Okay, so what are the factors that are considered? If the purpose is to determine flight risk and danger to the community, what are the factors that the immigration judge considers? Well, there are several, such as the individual's criminal history. Does the individual who's detained, does he or she have criminal history? Does he or she have ties to the community? Does he or she have family connections? And even employment history is important because when you have a stable job and you've been showing up to work every day, it shows that you are someone who does not take off and vanish from the face of the earth. And that's kind of what flight risk means to an immigration judge. Now, what's the outcome of these hearings? If the judge grants a bond, the detained immigrant will be released once that payment of the amount is paid. And sometimes there are like companies, there are bail bond companies that you can hire, and you can mortgage your home. You can do all sorts of different things to come up with that cash to be able to pay the bond, and immigration will accept those types of payments. However, if the judge denies your loved one's request for a bond release, for an amount to be set for their release, the individual, your family member, is going to stay in custody while their case goes on. They will not be allowed to be released by the immigration judge. Now, in some cases like that, at New Frontier, we have filed things like a parole request, including if the family couldn't pay the bond, we've requested parole, and sometimes that works. And that's kind of a subject for a different topic. It's a different video, a different podcast. But I just want to let you know that even if it's been denied, sometimes there are still other options for us to explore. It's really important to note, as I kind of conclude the explanation of what this bond hearing is all about, it's important to note that bond hearings focus on the conditions of release. Is the judge going to let this person out of the jail, out of the detention center, or not? That's all they talk about. It is not focused on, although sometimes there's a conversation about, the focus is not on whether the individual has a really strong case, whether they filed their paperwork and that's necessary, whether they will win or not. It's really based on the danger to the community and whether they're a flight risk. Okay, so that's kind of what the focus is, and the outcome is determined based on those considerations. Next, you're going to wonder, what is the second type of hearing, which is called a master calendar hearing. Unlike bond hearings, master calendar hearings are preliminary hearings in the immigration court process, where the outcome for a bond hearing is, will he be able to be out of the detention center, or will he have to stay in the detention center for the duration of his case? For a bond hearing, for the master calendar hearing, the whole focus is on setting deadlines for adjudicating and deciding whether or not he gets granted immigration relief or not. It's all about, really, are they going to get a green card? Are they going to be released? Is their case going to be administratively closed? Are they going to get an asylum grant or not? Where the other proceedings, the bond proceedings are, is he going to get out of the detention center? Yes or no? Okay. So the purpose, let's talk about the purpose. The main purpose of a master calendar hearing is to manage the case. It really is. Everyone's getting their calendar out and saying, what are we going to do on what day so that we can get to the final resolution of this case? Because this individual is detained, which means they're locked up, and we need to prioritize moving their case right along. Judges are required to move through a certain number of cases every single month. And so they want to make sure that these cases are on the calendar, especially while someone is locked up in essentially a jail. It's really important to the judges, as it should be, to keep the cases moving. And so the master calendar, it really is to get out the big calendar and figure out, when do you have to file your application? When are you going to get all your evidence in? And when is your final hearing going to be? And at master calendar hearings, that's when they set those things. The immigration judge may have to speak to the immigrant and ask them various questions like, did you in fact enter on the date that it says on this piece of paper, at the location that it says on this piece of paper, etc. And so it's important that the immigrant understands, that the person who's detained understands what's going on. Now, the judge also has procedural matters that they have to address, like scheduling future hearings and addressing any other scheduling orders that may happen, which I've kind of mentioned to you already. And the most important thing for an outcome in a master calendar hearing is, unless the person says, I just want to be deported today, I just want to sign my voluntary departure, I don't want to do this anymore, no outcome will be reached. Just another date for another hearing will be set at this master calendar hearing. For this reason, New Frontier, oftentimes, in almost every case, we will not appear, we will not show up for a master calendar hearing. In fact, we will not allow most of our clients, family members, to even hire us for master calendar hearings, because we want to get your family member out on bond. We want to get them released so that when they're going through this process, they're then able to hire us. We're able to go to court with them. They're not in the jail where they're not able to access a lot of the things that they're going to need to fight their case. And so New Frontier, as a policy at this time, will not represent someone at a master calendar hearing. What can feel kind of strange, especially for the immigrant who's detained, is they will have these hearings back to back, like in the same room, with the same judge. Everything will be the same. And at one of the hearings, in one moment, it's almost like a scene from a TV show. And then we have a commercial break and we come back and we have the next scene. In one scene, New Frontier Immigration Law is there for the bond hearing, and we're fighting for the client to be able to get out of the detention center. In another scene, the immigrant comes back up to the table. The judge goes back on the record and is explaining, this is so-and-so sitting in Florence Immigration Court on such and such date. Before me is appearing so-and-so without an attorney. And we're going to now do his or her master calendar hearing. And then that's how they would go forward. We would not represent the immigrant in that second hearing in my example that I've given you. Okay. So it's really important that you understand what you're hiring for. Whenever, when you go through the process, whether you're hiring New Frontier Immigration Law or you're hiring another firm, it's really important to understand the difference, whether it's one of those hearings or both of those hearings, because that's going to really set the mindset for the person who's detained. If they think that their attorney's supposed to be there for both and the attorney's only there for one, they get super stressed out, and I don't blame them. I've had to go to court and when I was a kid, and it was really scary to not know what was going on. So I really empathize with clients in the situation. But for New Frontier, we're going to appear for the bond hearing, not the master calendar hearing. Everybody needs to know the difference between those two things. Now, I really want to summarize the key differences as we close out this episode of the key differences between bond hearings and master calendar hearings. In terms of purpose, bond hearings determine if the detained immigrant is going to be released on bond or not. Master calendar hearings, by contrast, manage the overall immigration case. Will you get granted 42B? Will you get granted asylum? Will you basically be allowed to stay in the U.S. with a green card? Okay. The difference for focus is the bond hearing focus is on the risk posed by the immigrant. Is he or she going to show back up to court? Is he or she going to drink and drive or possibly commit more crimes if she's released from the immigration detention center while her case is going on? By contrast, master calendar hearings focus on procedural matters and case management, like when are you going to submit your evidence? When is your application going to be filed with the court? And when is your final hearing going to be set? And how much time do you need for that final hearing? In terms of outcome, I want to compare and contrast these as well. Bond hearings can result in an immigrant's release and bond. That can be the outcome. They're released or they're not released. That's really the only way when you get to a final decision for a bond case, that it's going to go one way or the other, right? By contrast, a master calendar hearing, there's not going to be any decisions that are made, just more dates that are set, okay? Unless, of course, the individual says, I'm not going to file an asylum claim, you can just deport me, I don't want to be here, and those types of things, of course, which we really advise for clients not to do unless they are just truly not wanting to continue to fight their case in the United States. Now, understanding the difference can help you support your loved one throughout the immigration process. And most importantly, it helps us work with you on such a better level so that we communicate early and upfront and often about exactly what you've hired us for. Bond hearings offer a chance for temporary release, while master calendar hearings ensure that the case proceeds in an organized and timely manner. That's all for today on our episode of Immigration Law Made Easy. We hope this explained the difference between bond hearings and master calendar hearings in a helpful way. If you have any questions or concerns, please let us know. And if this is helpful to you, please share with a friend. And if you decide that you want to retain us, please contact us. We would love to be able to help your loved one get out of the detention center. And if you are unable to do it yourself, if you're unable to hire us, I have several podcast episodes where I give you all the information that I can possibly give you without knowing your case specifically in earlier episodes on Immigration Law Made Easy on my podcast. So you're welcome to check that out as well. Thanks so much, friends.